Saint-Lazare as a Women's Prison, 1794 to 1932, by the Reverend Edward R. Udovic, C.M. Introduction. In Ancien Regime Paris, the name Saint-Lazare would have immediately conjured up images of the venerable mother house of the Lazarists, located on the Rue Saint-Denis just outside the city gates. This vast headquarters of arguably the most influential religious community in France was also the site of the oft-visited pilgrimage shrine containing the remains of the quintessential French saint Vincent de Paul. However, throughout the 19th and into the first third of the 20th century, the name Saint-Lazare would have immediately conjured up very different images of a notorious prison housing prostitutes, delinquent girls, and other women prisoners and convicts. The name and the place in both cases are one and the same. Founded in the 12th century by Louis VII as a leprosarium far outside the gates of the medieval city, the Priory of Saint-Lazare already had a long history when it unexpectedly fell into the hands of Vincent de Paul. With no more lepers in residence and only a handful of aging monks, the last prior, Adrien Le Bon, was searching for a way to put the property to a new ecclesiastical use and guarantee the retirement needs of his dwindling community. Vincent de Paul and the newly founded Congregation of the Mission were an answer to his prayers. Vincent's community already had a small headquarters in Paris at the Collège des Beaux Enfants, located near St. Victor's Gate. Although he was initially reluctant to take on the responsibility of administering such a large enterprise as Saint-Lazare, Vincent de Paul was ultimately convinced to take the step. On January 12, 1632, the priory became the maison mère of the Congregation of the Mission. The rather ramshackle enclosed compound that Vincent knew was rebuilt at great expense at the end of the 17th century by his second successor as Superior General of the Lazarists, Edmond Joly. Early in the morning of July 13, 1789, the first act of organized revolutionary violence in Paris, leading to the more famous attack the next day on the Bastille, was the sacking of Saint-Lazare for its grain stores. The sackers were well organized and efficient in their labors. Following the departure of the heavily laden grain wagons, crowds from the neighborhood eagerly finished looting the complex from top to bottom. The Garde Française and their nearby barracks refused to intervene to stop the pillage. Over the next 3 years, the revolution quickly spun out of control and headed toward the end of the monarchy, the executions of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, the civil constitution of the clergy, and the Reign of Terror. The Assemblée Législative disbanded the Lazarists and confiscated Saint-Lazare and all of its properties and assets as of September 1, 1792. During 1794, Saint-Lazare was pressed into service as a prison to house enemies of the Revolution. At its height that year, the facility housed 721 inmates. On December 15, 1794, the Convention Nationale designated the prison as a women's facility. Prisoners began arriving almost immediately, even though the building still lacked bars for the windows and high walls to enclose the prison compound. On April 9, 1811, the Napoleonic government gave Saint-Lazare over to the Department of the Seine. After the confirmation of their legal reestablishment by the newly restored Louis XVIII in February 1814, the Lazarists asked the king to return Saint-Lazare to the congregation. The monarch readily agreed to do so until he was pointedly reminded of the exorbitant cost of building a replacement prison. The original complex, inherited from the Lazarists, was later expanded in the 1820s and 1830s at a cost of 1,500,000 francs, with the addition of a new chapel, separate wings for the infirmary and the section administrative of the prison, and other upgrades. During the 19th century, the population of Paris grew substantially as a result of the Industrial Revolution. The prison, which had once stood in a relatively undeveloped section of the city, increasingly found itself hemmed in by the densely populated Quartier Poissonnière of Nouvelle-France in the 10th arrondissement, intersected by Baron Haussmann's new boulevards, and not far from two of the city's new train stations, the Gare du Nord and the Gare de l'Est, as well as Jacques-Ignace Ittor's magnificent Basilica of St. Vincent de Paul and the Hôpital Lariboisière.